Hey everybody! If you're interested in filmmaking and are looking for an entry-level camera and great value for money, you might come across the Sony A6300. In this video, I'll tell you what I like about this camera, what I don't like so much, and whether the Sony A6300 is still the perfect entry-level camera for filmmakers in 2018. My name is Werner, I live in the Italian Alps. This channel is about filmmaking and GoPro. Have fun with this video! Exactly 1 year ago on Black Friday, I bought the Sony A6300. The camera was offered together with the kit lens at an excellent price. There will be some great deals again this year. I'll put the link in the video description, then you can check the current prices. Right at the start, I want to make it clear that the A6300 is not a new product. The camera was introduced in 2016. The same year, with the A6500, a clearly more expensive successor was introduced, and already for months now, there are rumors about when and with which features an A6700 or an A7000 will be introduced. It is also a fact that there are many interesting alternatives for filmmakers today. More or less, most of them are in much higher price categories. Also, never forget that the camera is only the first investment. Often, you will spend at least the same amount on lenses. In the end, it doesn't make sense to film with a $2000 camera and a cheap kit lens. So if you're interested in a camera and the price matters, you should always consider at the same time which lenses you need and how much they cost. The whole package is decisive. So what is it that makes the A6300 so interesting in its price segment even in 2018? The A6300 has an APS-C sensor and records 4K video at up to 30 frames per second. That's basically nothing special. More interesting is the fact that the camera handles this with a full sensor readout and there is no crop in 4K and 24 frames per second. But these are all just specs. Fact is that the 4K image is still great even 2 years after its release and can compete with much more expensive cameras in many areas. I also think it's also great that with the Sony APS-C sensor you have a very good low-light performance, and with a fast lens you can easily and effectively produce a shallow depth of field and thus a super cinematic image. For me, the image quality is one of the absolute highlights of the A6300. What I underestimated when buying this camera and didn't really consider is the importance of high frame rates. The A6300 can record in 1080p with 120 frames per second. This is important because you can create incredible cinematic slow-motion sequences easily and manually. It is often criticized that the image in Full HD would look very soft. In general, that's true. The fact is, however, that this isn't particularly noticeable in close-ups. Of course, I would wish a sharper image in 1080p, but if you upscale the footage and use it for YouTube, you won't notice the difference so much. Also, once you've tried it out, you see that the difference between 60 frames per second and 120 frames per second is crucial. A slow motion of 20% simply looks much more cinematic than 40%. The camera also has lock profiles and several flat cine profiles that you can use to create your own look. As far as the lock profiles are concerned, you have to add that they are not very easy to use. The video files also do not contain an infinite amount of information at a bitrate of 100 megabits per second. On the other hand, I can tell you that my 2017 MacBook Pro handles these files very well and that the 4K files in Final Cut Pro can be edited absolutely smoothly and in real time. In addition to the image quality, the continuous autofocus is certainly a highlight of the camera. If you're interested in cameras for filmmaking, you'll find that continuous autofocus in video mode is an area where even more expensive cameras still have their difficulties. As for the A6300, I can assure you that it works great and I never had any problems with it. I appreciate that, especially when I'm filming myself. Especially when I'm shooting in the studio, I can't remember a time when the autofocus would have let me down. In addition to image quality and autofocus, I also appreciate the size of the camera. For such an advanced camera, it is very small, which has many advantages. If you want to film a lot outdoors, you save volume and weight, at least if you use the right lens. Anyone who's been out in the mountains with a camera knows what I'm talking about. You can also use a smaller gimbal because of its size, which saves space and money. Unfortunately, the small size also has some disadvantages. Ergonomically, the camera is not perfect. It doesn't fit perfectly in your hand and sometimes feels like a toy. Sony has probably also decided to make the size a unique selling proposition. That's why they try to keep the lenses small. This is probably one of the reasons why there is still no high quality and fast standard zoom lens. Apart from that, I would like to tell you what I don't like about the camera, so you can decide for yourself whether it's a deal breaker for you or not. Unlike the A6500, the A6300 has no IBIS. Stabilization is always an important issue when filming. If you want to film handheld, you should consider lenses with image stabilization. Apart from the kit lens, for example the 18-105 from Sony or the 35-1.8 if you're interested in a prime lens. Unfortunately, Sigma's fantastic prime lenses, for example, are not stabilized, and the general choice of lenses with stabilization is limited. The A6500 has IBIS, but it is much more expensive and therefore difficult to call a beginner's camera. The second really big disadvantage in my eyes is the built-in screen. Apart from the fact that it's not a flip-out screen, its quality is average at best. When shooting in 4K or 1080-120, the brightness of the screen outdoors and during the day is barely sufficient to work with it properly. Of course, there are solutions for this, but it doesn't make the overall handling of the camera any easier. And rolling shutter is also an issue in 4K. Personally, for me, no deal breaker, because you should avoid fast movements anyway in 4K, because of their rather weak stabilization. Nevertheless, the rolling shutter worsens the good overall impression. The camera has other disadvantages, such as a short battery life or a confusing menu, but I can live with that quite well, and these disadvantages are not decisive for me. I am sure that there will be excellent deals for this camera again in the next few weeks, and you will see that it will not disappoint you if you want to learn more about filmmaking. You should also not forget that it's also a very good camera for photos. With this, I say goodbye from the Alps. Give me a like as feedback if you want to see more videos about shooting with the Sony, and until next time.